It is over. I just watched the latest podcast from Pablo Torre on the Clippers scandal, and this was published on February 10th. And the implications here are so widespread. This will be absolutely historic. Whereas before, I thought, even though with all of the aspiration, information, and evidence, it looked like the NBA was going to be able to get away with just delaying the story, putting it off until people lose interest, and then moving on from that with there being no direct connection. So we just, as much as we didn't like the evidence, there was nothing here. This latest podcast completely changed this, and Pablo Torre has dropped this podcast right before All-Star Weekend. So now, when this has to get more coverage, like I don't think right now it's getting a lot, but there's going to be more. And when it is, this puts the NBA in a very, very difficult position. So this is just a reaction video, and we're going to go over a few bullet points, a few takeaways just from my initial thoughts of the podcast. So let's get to that now. And actually, before we do, let's go ahead and play a quote from Pablo Torre, and this is from his appearance on the Dan Le Batard show, which I think was yesterday.
No one has the ability to buy the rest of the NBA combined. This guy does. No one was the CEO of the foremost monopoly in America, Microsoft, when the American government's antitrust department was coming after them for monopolistic behavior and anti-competitive practices. That was Steve Ballmer. Steve Ballmer didn't give about the rules around competition when it came to the actual federal laws. You think he cares about the NBA salary cap when he thinks that?
Okay, so that's a really good quote. I'll link to this video. I'll link to the podcast, but let's go over some of the bullet points. Again, this happens right before NBA All-Star Weekend. So the NBA now has to, they want their focus to be on the basketball, but this is so historic. Like what Pablo has laid out, and there's so much information here, and that's what I have next. There's a lot of information. That's why this is just this initial reaction to the podcast, because there's a lot to go through. And so that is what I'm going to do, is I'm going to go through the podcast, extract the main points, and try to simplify and distill down everything. And there's a lot to get through. So it's going to take time for me to get through that. But I still remember in Pablo's tweet, one of the ways he left off the scandal when we last heard from him, in one of the last tweets, he had the spool of thread, and he was indicating that he's going to pull on that string. Well, now we can see, I think Pablo's had at least parts of this in mind, way before, months ago. And now we're seeing the result of this. So he was not done. There is a lot to go through here. And the next bullet point is, how can any of this be explained other than the Clippers circumvented the salary cap and tampered with Kawhi Leonard when he was with the Spurs? And it even goes beyond this. There are so many. As I said, the implications here are so widespread. It's just something where that's why I have a starting video, and then we're going to have maybe possibly multiple videos where I look at the different points and we just break down, because there were multiple. It wasn't just one aspect of this that Pablo was looking at. And when you go through this, you'll understand. I mean, just going through the podcast, there are so many different waves and angles of information that it's really hard. It would be really difficult for the Clippers and the NBA to explain this away. And so one question I had was, if Pablo had waited to release this, what would have been the NBA's findings from the Wachtell? What would the NBA have disclosed or come to the conclusion to after the Wachtell-Lipton investigation? But Pablo has timed this, so it's ahead of the All-Star Weekend. I'm going to look at what is the media coverage. I haven't seen a lot of the media coverage. And in fact, I didn't watch the podcast until today. So it's almost 2 days. I think it's nearly 2 days since the podcast was released. And we've had other podcasts from Pablo earlier, months prior, where the podcast the information wasn't as scintillating. It wasn't as compelling. This one was very much, this was such a significant release from Pablo. So what does the NBA do? This is such a ball of hangers that the NBA that's not going to be untangled. And you're not going to be able to untangle this. It's so difficult to now explain away this, even with aspiration. Like in the very beginning, in the first podcast, the first few podcasts, that was already impossibly difficult to explain away. But you had the delay game where you push this out, you push this months away. Things get lost, things get forgotten. Nobody cares anymore. The interest wanes. But now Pablo has just reinvigorated everything. So this is, I think, when more people look into this, there's any slight coverage, it's just going to inflame what Pablo started months ago. So this is a real problem. This one was a significant drop. This is now what we have now is a historical scandal that is no longer under wraps. So usually this can be brought back under control. And so let's just think about the scenario we just saw with this scandal. The scandal unfolds. There is compelling information, but it's able to be contained and explained away. We saw Mark Cuban trying to explain away some of this, and so there's some connection to plausible deniability, and that's just not here. When everything is looked at in totality, how does this get explained away? And that's what's needed here, right? Because what's happening here is Pablo is just dripping truth, And so there was a pause in that drip for several months, but now it's resumed, and we've got much more information to go off of. So the players, and I say players in the game have lost all control. So you're looking at the NBA, you're looking at Steve Ballmer, you're looking at the Clippers, and whoever else, right? Like all of these different players of varying degrees of power, but the control is lost because Pablo has access to the information and he's disseminating that information. So that's also in play. And Pablo has connected the dots. And so now what the players in the game need to do, right, to try to get this back under wraps is to tell us how these dots that look very connected aren't actually connected at all. And that's going to be extremely difficult to do. It was already extremely difficult to do, but Pablo it's an onslaught of information. And so it's not all, the information is not all 100%. We know this is factual with no doubt. But when you stack all of these different pieces, how are you able to explain this away? And so that's now what needs to happen from the players in the game. Explain. Okay, we've seen some different versions of explanations, or at least some you refuting some of this information previously. Now go ahead and explain this away. Like how is this not accurate, or how is this not the story that's being portrayed? And so Pablo has connected a lot of the dots. He's got a lot of the documentation. Again, just because it's documentation doesn't mean we know that it's 100% factual, but it is compelling, and it does lead to the question. Okay, well, tell us this isn't true. How is this not true? So that's what I'll be doing in this next podcast, where I have a chance to watch Pablo's podcast at least another 1 or 2 times, so that I can extract some of these primary points, and then go through what Pablo is explaining. I might divide it into 2 videos. I'm not sure, but now putting together these points, because anybody, if you watch this podcast, when you're watching it, you're just hit with so many different waves of information that it's like you are still trying to work through the previous information, and Pablo's giving you more. So it looks like there's this significant drop right before All-Star Weekend, which of course the focus is all going to be on the game. And they want us to be talking about the slam dunk contest, and how to fix the All-Star game, and are players actually playing or are they not? Because if the focus is here, it's so much worse, and the NBA is in an extremely difficult position. And then so something else I'll be doing is, like what I've done before, is examining the media coverage. Who's actually talking about this? I heard Bill Simmons make mention of the Clippers scandal, and I don't even remember the context, but in a recent podcast, he made mention of the Clippers scandal, but I don't know if that was after Bill had found out about this latest podcast. But this one is significant, and it's not going to be so easy for everything to just go away, because there's too much information has come to light. So unless there's just a way where we can conveniently discount all of this information, it's there, right? And it's like, are you going to ignore this? Like, how do you ignore this? And is the media just going to ignore it? Is that what this is going to be? Is like, when we find out all of the information, do we all does the media just collectively look away from this? So that's something I'll be looking at as well. I've covered Pablo's reporting previously. He's done such a good job with presenting all of the information. Obviously, the reporting. I mean, just the very fact that it's going to take me multiple times to watch the video just shows you how exhaustive the reporting is, and how much information he has. So really good podcast, very interesting information, a very interesting story. And I think what we've talked about previously is this is like it's somewhat like a true crime, or like a mystery for Netflix, but for the NBA, and it's playing out in real life. And we've seen it brought back to life by Pablo, who started this all. And so Pablo's brought this back to life. This latest podcast, if you haven't listened to it, it's not, I don't think it's getting a lot of media coverage. That's not something I've really looked into, but I just found out about it through a Reddit thread, and going back to it now. Yeah, this is significant right before All-Star Weekend, and I don't see a good answer for the NBA. So we'll see what and Adam Silver also has questions. He's going to get asked about tanking. Interesting as interest, but that's a part of the game. This is completely separate. This is a scandal that now they're just not under wraps anymore, right? Pablo has this is very much historic. This is such a significant story, and we'll see how the NBA absorbs this. But it's going to be very difficult for the NBA to carry forward in the same form and fashion that they have been. Something has got to give. There's too much information. Pablo has connected this. He's researched this, and now he's presented it. And now it's going to be very interesting to see what the reaction is to all of this information being disseminated. So I will be covering this here. I've got to watch the videos. There's just so much to go through. But I highly recommend the Pablo's podcast. I will link to that in the description. So we'll leave it here, and we'll pick up with the next video, where I'm going to be looking at all of these different major bullet points that Pablo has presented.